Today, we are diving into a truly revolutionary material. We're talking about a thread of glass so perfect, so incredibly powerful, that it can only be made in the one place that's free from Earth's most basic rule, gravity. Let's get into it.
Just think about that for a second. What if you could have a single optical fiber with, say, 10 to 100 times less signal loss than the very best stuff we use today? What would that do for global communication, for medicine, for everything?
Here's the thing. That material isn't some sci-fi dream. It's totally real. But for decades, all of that incredible potential has been locked away, ruined by the simple, relentless pull of gravity every single time we try to make it here on Earth.
And that material has a name, ZBLAN. It's a special kind of fluoride glass that, in theory, is almost perfectly transparent to light. That means it could shoot data across entire oceans without needing any of those expensive signal boosters or repeaters that our current internet backbone absolutely depends on.
So what's the big deal? Why can't we just make perfect ZBLAN doing here? Well, it all comes down to a force you know very, very well, Earth's gravity.
Yep, you heard that right. When it comes to making flawless ZBLAN, gravity isn't our friend. It's literally the villain of the story, the force that actively messes things up, creating tiny little flaws that completely ruin the final product.
So here's how it goes down. ZBLAN is kind of like a cocktail of different elements, and they all have different weights. When you melt it down, gravity makes the heavier bits sink and the lighter ones rise. This kicks off these currents, a process called convection, that are constantly stirring the hot liquid. So as this uneven soup cools down, it can't form a perfect uniform glass. Instead, these tiny little crystals start popping up, and those crystals are absolutely disastrous. They're like little roadblocks that scatter the light, completely wrecking the fiber's performance.
And wow, this picture just says it all, doesn't it? On the right, that's ZBLAN made on Earth. You can see it's just full of those performance-killing crystals. But the image on the left, that's ZBLAN made up in the microgravity of space. It's smooth, it's uniform, it's perfectly clear. That is the perfect glass we've been chasing for decades. So if gravity is the problem, the solution is kind of obvious, right? You have to get away from it. You have to go to space.
In the near-weightless environment of low Earth orbit, those gravity-driven currents, they just vanish. The molten glass stays perfectly still, perfectly mixed, which lets it cool down into a flawless, crystal-free fiber. The villain is gone.
But wait, it's not just about stopping the mix from stirring. There's actually a more subtle and, honestly, a more fascinating piece of physics going on here. And it all has to do with something called shear.
It's something called the shear thinning hypothesis. Okay. The basic idea is that when you stir or apply stress, what a physicist would call shear, to certain fluids, their viscosity, or their thickness, actually goes down.
Okay, think about it like this. On Earth, gravity's constant stirring creates high shear. This makes the molten glass flow more like water, which lets those pesky crystals form really, really easily. But in space, there's almost no shear. The glass becomes way more viscous. It starts to behave more like thick honey. And that thickness acts like a powerful brake, slowing down the whole crystallization process so much that it just doesn't happen.
For decades, this was all a brilliant theory, backed by some small-scale experiments. But this year, 2024, that all changed. This is the moment it became an industrial reality.
And this didn't happen overnight. We're talking about a 50-year journey here, from its discovery back in '74 to those early NASA experiments in the '90s, and even some initial tests on the ISS just a few years ago. Every single step has been building towards this year's massive breakthrough.
A company called Flawless Photonics, working with the ISS National Lab, launched a mission that was so much more than just another experiment. No, this was a full-scale, automated production run. They proved this can actually be done at commercial volumes.
And get this, in just 2 weeks, their machines spun out nearly 12 kilometers of this fiber. That's over 7 miles, a level of production that, honestly, was just unimaginable before now.
And maybe even more importantly, they made a single continuous piece of fiber over a kilometer long, completely shattering the old records. This proves they can make commercially viable lengths, turning the stuff from a cool lab curiosity into a real-world product you can actually use.
Okay, but let's be real. Manufacturing anything in space is ridiculously expensive. So how on earth could this ever be a real business? Well, the answer is that perfection is really valuable. Projections estimate that space-made ZBLAN could sell for an incredible $3 million per kilogram. Now I know, that sounds completely astronomical, but just look at the numbers. Even at that insane price, the cost to bring it back home to Earth, somewhere between $1,000 and $10,000 a kilogram, is practically a rounding error in comparison. The value isn't in the shipping, it's in the unique performance you just can't get anywhere else.
So who's going to pay for this? Well, the first customers are going to be in fields where performance is absolutely non-negotiable. We're talking repeaterless cables under the ocean, ultra-precise laser scalpels for surgery, unbelievably powerful industrial lasers, and next-gen sensors for defense and aerospace. These are all areas where cost is a distant second to capability.
And this whole thing isn't just about one amazing material. It really feels like we're witnessing the dawn of a whole new industrial era.
You know, leaders in this space, like Andrew Rush, the CEO of Made in Space, they don't just see one little factory up there. They see this as the very first step towards a true in-space economy, one that could grow from a factory to an industrial park, and maybe, just maybe, one day, even cities in space. So ZDLN proves the business model, right? Find a material that microgravity makes uniquely perfect, figure out how to produce it, and then sell it to high-value markets back on Earth. It's the first huge success story. So the question this leaves all of us with is, what other perfect materials are just waiting up there for us to make, just beyond the sky?